And you'll see your whole room light up with thumbs up and clapping, Aubrey. Thanks very much. Thank you. Okay, the third speaker of the second period is, well, I should remind everybody, I think I can just do, everybody should be muting, but a couple have pointed out, I went back and I muted one or two, but so our next speaker is Len Gould is the president of QEP, and first began collecting rare and archival ice hockey footage in 1987, and over the time, he has amassed a collection to rival that of any other. Len has worked with major archives, museums, and a global network of individuals to uncover over 2,000 hours of lost ice hockey footage. He's worked closely with the Hockey Hall of Fame Resource Center to grow their collection, and has also served as an independent appraiser for other archival donations to the Hockey Hall of Fame. Len is going to share a few of his stories about his passion. Take it away, Len.
Hey, thank you so much. And thank you, first of all, Bill, for allowing me the opportunity, Fred and the rest of the team for this entire event. And everyone who's participating. It's been great so far. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect,
yes.
Perfect. Hey, before I jump in the intermission, heard some folks talking about people who were left out of the Hall of Fame and some of the various opinions on egregious misses and whatnot. I figured I would just throw my 2 cents in there. To me, Stan Fischler is Pat Burns 2.0. 65 years, worked for the league, worked for teams, hundreds of books, every magazine known to man. That's before the broadcasting. Anyway, that's just an opinion, and we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about sort of the fun adventure that I get to live as sort of an Indiana Jones of hockey. So back in 1987 on October 26th, it was a big day for me because it was the first time I had ever sat in the red seats at Madison Square Garden. And in the old days, those were the good seats. And so I was down right by the ice when the arch enemies, the bad guys, the Philadelphia Flyers, Dave Brown, cross-checked my, at that time, favorite player, Thomas Sandstrom, in the back of the neck. And it was a wild, crazy, emotional event for someone who had never come across anything like this before. And life moved on, and shortly thereafter, a few weeks later, the hockey news came out, and essentially the coverage of that incident was unrelated to anything I saw. It was not an accurate description, to put it fairly. And so thankfully, in the back of that very same hockey news, there were all sorts of different people selling hockey fight tape compilations, VHS tape and beta tape compilations at that time. And one of them had this mentioned in the ad, and I picked it up. And for me, footage is truth. Footage is clarity, because you're not getting somebody's opinion or what somebody is remembering or what somebody has been told that they saw, unless, unlike Mr. Stanfield, they've lived it. Footage, I think, is the next best arbiter of truth for our sport. And I became a junkie, frankly, and one tape became a couple. And like everything else in life, when you meet people as you go through life, they introduce you to other people. So thankfully, I'd like to point out Mr. Paul Patsku, who's on here. Wave to everyone, Paul, say hi. Paul's the master. When I came across Paul, I was almost, I don't want to just say a fan or a collector, because it was serious to me, but I came across this guy who was helping former NHL players, one after another, with footage that was meaningful to them or their families. Paul exposed me to a number of different people and different avenues and vice versa. And I like to think of myself as one of the most well-known completely unknowns. So there's 75 people on here. I've done Hockey Hall of Fame evaluations for 9 of you, even though we haven't met. So you can also see why I'm sort of passionate about Stan. You know, when Stan moved overseas to Israel, I was very, very honored and proud when Brian McFarlane and Paul pointed me to Stan and enabled me to curate his collection. So I kind of move around in the background, and I call myself an archaeologist because that's what I do. I'm not creating anything. What I'm doing is I'm finding things that have been lost to time. I'm finding things that have at one point or another in their existence been deemed non-important or irrelevant. This stuff was considered trash to a lot of people, and the further back you go in time, frankly, the stories get better and better because I end up coming across predecessors of people that I like to think are like me, if that makes sense. But I love it. There's nothing like doing it. There is nothing like doing it. So I have a super high stress job that takes me all over the place. And we're not, again, it's not about that. What that does, though, is it enables me to sit down and meet with different people who have had some experience in this game that we all love. I mean, we're all sitting here on a Saturday talking about this. So, and I do get around. I'm talking to you from South Florida right now, and I will bet you that I'm the only guy on the Zoom call today who's from South Florida, but who's been to multiple Regina Pack games. Let's put it that way. You're looking at my current project list right there, guys. So I'm very, very proud that I'm working with Bob Gassoff Jr. Bob Gassoff was an iconic, legendary, prototypical defenseman that only really existed from 68 to 78 before it became, I guess, more commercialized. Don't get me started on that. And he tragically died in a traffic accident. Actually, right after the party to close out the year, after the 76-77 season. And his 23-year-old wife was pregnant at that time with Bob Jr. And so Bob Jr., phenomenal guy in his own right, and a phenomenal hockey story also in his own right. Just real quick, he tried the junior route, he tried colleges, he made it to minor pro, he did the season in the E, he made it to the A, but because of his name, he couldn't play the game he loved, because anytime he went somewhere, it was gong show time. If you fast forward, he left, he became a Navy SEAL, became a celebrated Navy SEAL, and then became a trainer of Navy SEALs. Had never heard his dad's voice except for 2 or 3 lines uttered in a True Blues documentary that the Blues released in the late 80s. Had never heard his dad's voice. And there's no footage of this guy playing, because those of you familiar with the types of media used over the years, and you know, the middle 70s it's a barren wasteland. You know, tapes were so expensive. Any of the tapes, 3/4, 2-inch, U-matic, didn't matter. They were so expensive. They were just used over and over and over again. And that means nothing survived. It's amazing to most people that you can more readily find footage from the 1950s and 40s and 60s than you can the 1970s. but he's a genuinely appreciative guy. And you know what? So are his kids, and so is his mom, Bob's wife. The middle picture there, that's Jerry Rollins. Paul helped me track down, and together we double teamed unlocking an interview that his father, New York Ranger goalie Al Rollins, gave. 15-minute interview talking about the brand new baby Jerry. We were able to dig that up and rescue that for him. And I think you guys could see me getting worked up here. I get very passionate about this. I love what I do. That's Murray Costello on the end. Murray needs zero introduction to this group. Murray also didn't have a very long NHL playing career, while his hockey career is multi-decade. The gentleman only scored one hat trick in his NHL career, and right smack dab in the middle of 55, 56. It was a phenomenal feeling to be able to dig up that game film and find it for him and find it for his family. And when you talk to these guys and you hear the tears in their voices, you want to do more of it. Because at one point it all did exist, right? It's no different than dinosaur bones. It did exist. It's just a matter of, does it still, and can you find it, right? So I'm short-circuiting the questions a little bit, although I love questions. But I get the same questions everywhere I go. The most meaningful discovery, that's a tough one, and I probably have changed my answer about a dozen times because look who I'm talking to. It's a group steeped in history, but I would say that my most proud historical find was a very brief, it's not quite a minute long in total length, but it's the last minute or so of the 1959 Stanley Cup final. So you have Red Story officiating his last game in the Chicago Stadium, and you have 14,000 fans showering the ice with garbage. And I don't mean crumpled up pieces of paper, I mean showering the ice with garbage over a call that Story did not make. And while he's arguing with the players, a fan jumps out of the stands and essentially attacks him. And in his book, which is a phenomenal book called Red's Story, it's quite old at this point, he talks about how Doug Harvey saved him. Doug Harvey came, and in the book, he put it along the lines of, and he gave it to the fan. Well, I wanted to know what that meant. And it took the better part of 8 years to track it down. And of all places, I found it in London, England, at an archive, an old American archive that had just been purchased by another one, and then by another one, et cetera, until it rolled up into the Path folks in Europe. Yeah, to answer the very next question, yes, Doug Harvey does come in and actually spear, more like a pitchfork, this guy in a way that it made a statement. Let's put it that way. Craziest thing, that could be the craziest thing, but the old footage is great. If you love, someone mentioned in one of the earlier presentations the analogy between the WHA and Slapshot. I would tell you that the WHA and Slapshot had nothing on the 1950s National Hockey League, because the craziest thing I've seen was Leo Levine doing what today would be 15 or 20 game suspensions over and over on the same shift. It was a different time and a different game, and you would see him essentially chop somebody down and nothing. I mean, literally nothing, not even the stoppage in play, no 2-minute penalty. It's impressive. Not the act's impressive, it's impressive what's out there waiting to be discovered. most meaningful discovery I've made for somebody else who hadn't seen something that's easy. That was Bernie Geoffrion's 500th goal. That was sitting in Montreal in the TVA archives. And he had never seen a color footage of his 500th goal. But we cured that. And it's that was probably the most meaningful for somebody else. No, I don't charge anybody anything for anything. This is what I do. This is what I love. And this is not something I try to or ever have made money at. Guys, if you have film out there, while I have everyone's attention, if you have something in your bottom of your closet, if it's a film reel, if it's a cassette, a cartridge, a videotape of some sort, you need to know that it's dying right now. These things, they're all iron oxide based, they're carbide based, they're dying and dissolving. So I would encourage you, and I'm not saying use me, although I'm happy to point you in the right direction. I'm happy to point you into the right direction of people who can transfer things as well, directly without me involved. But they're going to go away forever because they don't, when they dissolve, they dissolve. Boy, do I get a lot of YouTube questions. Why isn't everything that I've done on YouTube? Why don't I just stick it on YouTube and give it to the whole world? And the reality is that, I guess the reality is that this is, it's more than thousands of hours of my life, and it's a whole lot more than thousands of my dollars and efforts. And the second something hits YouTube, it essentially has no value anymore. So I've handled that conundrum in a couple of ways that's been tough, but I've learned my lesson. Honestly, YouTube today is littered with the consequences of my former inadequate placing of trust. There are collections, someone mentioned classicauctions.net. There are archives that I've donated to museums that have ended up being sold through that very outfit. I'm referring, by the way, before anyone asks, about the Vancouver collection of 5 years ago, where 30 some odd pneumatic tapes all of a sudden came up for auction. So I'm leery. I'm a bit gun shy for this because it's real history, and it's not my history to give away. I don't own this. So what am I doing? Red Story and Doug Harvey and all that? Well, the first thing probably any of you would do is I got it in the hands of Craig Campbell over at the Hall of Fame. Get it into the right places so that it can live on in perpetuity the right way at the right time. But it's not for me to stick it on eBay or, God forbid, see it on eBay. So hopefully you guys have a big screen here because I wanted to share a tiny example. I know I'm running out of time, so I've got a minute left. And I think everybody's going to love this here because I would be surprised if anybody had seen this before. It runs 1 minute. Look for the odd matchup of the American Hockey League champion Maine Mariners and the WHA's New England Whalers, and look for Gordie Howe's reaction when asked a really, really poor question by a young reporter.
Most guys like to retire, or have retiring with the team they played with for so many years, but uniform today. When I retired, it was for the obvious reason that fun had left the game. And then once again, when the double team came along, drafted two boys and brought the fun.
So guys, you can see just how exciting this passion of mine can end up being. I mean, that's a 55-second clip of a team from a league that doesn't exist anymore playing a minor league team in an arena outside of either of their two states. You still get new Gordie Howe to see and to share with. And yes, the family has that as well. Hopefully you can see this last slide here. Hold on. There we go. Let's see. Current slide. There we go. So what's next for me? Well, here you go, guys. I'm sharing with you my current projects. It's what I love, and hopefully some of these guys mean something to you, and you should know that your families are going to be very happy. Yeah, I'm plugging Jerry's book because I love the guy, and it just came out 2 weeks ago. Bob Gassoff's brother, Brad Gassoff, another WHA guy, played in the league only 3 years in the very late 70s for Vancouver, working on projects for him. Above that, that's Red Sullivan, working with Red Sullivan's 2 sons and their 3 sons and 1 daughter. And there's all sorts of things. Red got around, and so he's a little more visible than some. So that's a big file. I see on the chat that someone mentioned Jim Nielsen, and something just went to the family. Well, that very same project list, you can see Pitt Martin up there. You see Tim Ryan. These are other folks who are going to get stuff that it's virgin material, and that means that it was reels. It was sitting on a film reel. In some cases, in Red Sullivan's case, there was one interview that was done. There was a New York station at the time called WPIX, had the Saturday Ranger rights, and they would do occasional specials, 3-minute specials. And Red was the star of one of these specials in 55 or 54, 55. And we got that. And again, the grandkids had never seen him as anyone other than the oldest of an old man. And they got to see just how fire he was. So the guy on the right, that's Lindsay Middlebrook, who only played a handful of games with the New Jersey Devils in their very first year of existence. And Justin BSing with Paul learned that Lindsay had never seen. There is no footage. First of all, there's nothing from the 82-83 Devils, almost nothing. But Lindsay's getting a surprise because we found a game versus the Philadelphia Flyers from October of that year. And yeah, I just look for the reactions. That's what I like. I like the thank you cards. So that is my presentation. I thank everybody for listening to me drone on. I thank Bill for the opportunity to drone on. And any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you very much, Lynn. I think one of your slides that you had was the usual questions. I jotted down a number of those, the answer to it. What format do you give the people who have requested your video clips? Is it a DVD or is it some other format that they usually
That's a great question.
request or give them?
It's a great question. The honest answer is however they would prefer it. So Bob Gassoff's kids and Red Sullivan's grandkids had digital files sent via WeTransfer, and then they downloaded it and watched it. Bob Gassoff Jr. and his mom and Red Sullivan's kids, I sent them all DVDs because that was their preference. But the honest answer is however it works for someone, that's my goal, because I end up having to work in every type of format. There's always a solution for somebody.
Okay. I think Bill Williams asked about his the collection digitized, or maybe that's the response, is that it depends on what your person would like. I think you've touched on the other questions I jotted down, Len.
Thank you much for the time, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank
everybody.
you. Now you can use the reaction button and you'll see your screen light up, Len. Okay, I'll get you on share your screen now, Len, and we can. So it's time for another intermission break. Let's go with a shorter intermission.